Welcome to We Got Options with the Doctor and Son. We're so happy that you came back to join us. Today, we are going into our podcast conversation talking about couples therapy 101. And one of the reasons why we want to go and talk about this today is because as of late, I have started back doing therapy. I am Dr. Latasha McElwain with Insightful Options and Green McElwain Foundation. And I am back into doing more individual therapy, more couples therapy, and working through a lot of issues and concerns as I'm working with a lot of my clients. And so we talked a little bit about Therapy 101 in one of our previous podcasts. So this one, I wanted to kind of talk about couples therapy. And this is kind of like 101, because a lot of people come into couples therapy and they're not sure, what to expect. A lot of my women usually sign up for couples therapy, and I would say sometimes drag their spouse along with them. But typically what happens is when individuals sign up for couples therapy, I would like it to be a agreed experience that both of them are going to have. But sometimes it takes some of my males a little bit to get to know me better. I get to know the therapist they're working with better before they, feel comfortable starting to share and going there. So, one of the things I wanted to address today, and me and Tremaine will definitely get into some conversations about couples therapy, is the fact that a lot of times when people come to couples therapy, again, they don't know what to expect, but they're already expecting there to be some level of siding, like a therapist siding with the male or a therapist siding with the female, who's right, who's wrong. And I like to tell a lot of my clients, it's not about that, especially when you get certain therapists and the way they work. I'm one of those therapists, I'm pretty much a straight shooter. I don't go into my therapy sessions wanting to, you know, help people understand. I want them to, I want to help them understand what's going on, but I don't want them to feel like, oh, she's just going to tell me anything just to keep me happy. She's going to be a therapist to tell me or whatever to keep me happy. One of the things I always say is I try not to blow smoke for no one. I try to make sure that we hit all points and all pointers. I do call most of my couples out. I will call the female out, call the male out, and that's usually something that I discuss with my couple as soon as they start working with me, that I'm a straight shooter. A lot of them, they like it. They like to hear what they're doing wrong. They like to hear what their spouse is doing wrong. They like to be not necessarily, but just be called out on what they're doing so that they can figure out whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing for them. Because what I usually say to individuals is, I can't say what it is wrong for your relationship. Only you can tell me whether that's right or that's wrong, because it depends on how you have started to, kind of govern your relationship. And everybody do things a little bit different. So, Tremaine, any thoughts or comments right now as we get ready to journey into this conversation about couples therapy 101?
Yeah. When when you said that it seems like people side with the male or female, I think it's very interesting you say that because in terms of what people think when they go into therapy, they're thinking, well, what am I doing wrong? And I think they just come in with the wrong type of mindset when you hear about it's not about what you're doing wrong, it's about kind of growing into, this is a relationship, so you're growing into the person that you're with. Like just because you have a relationship doesn't mean like you're not still growing and developing alongside this person. And it's not about you being wrong or you being right. It's about, you trying to find a mutual ground that you can stand on.
Yes. Tremaine, I'm so glad you said that, because you used one of the part of the words that I use when I'm talking to my couples. And one of the words that I use straight up is telling them that it's called growing pains. And as you're growing into this relationship, there are going to be some pains sometimes. There are going to be some great experiences. There's going to be some pains. There are going to be some just, you know, um, happy, exciting experiences and stuff with this growth that's going to happen. But there's going to be pain too, is what I usually tell my couples. And when they start hitting those, those pain points, that's where I come in to kind of help them figure out, okay, what can you do better, or what can you change, or what can we modify a little bit to get to a point where everyone feels like they're able to be themselves, you know? So,
Hmm.
so happy you brought that up and so happy you said that.
Yeah,
So,
it's all about getting into a good comfort zone where you don't feel uncomfortable and the other person doesn't feel uncomfortable.
correct, correct. And with that, one of the biggest things I like to do is I like to first, develop trust with both my clients. But a lot of times when we come in a couple sessions, I usually have them as a therapist, I have them I talk to them about trusting the process of what we're doing because a lot of them be like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "No, I'll ask them how they met. I asked them what their love story is. I asked them, how they grew up, how they experienced life in their homes, and what type of images did they have watching couples, if they had any at all. I asked them how was, living with mom and dad, living with dad alone, or living with mom alone, or mom going through several divorces, or dad going through divorces. I asked them all that relationship stuff that they have been exposed to as, young individuals. And then I kind of go into more of the talking about the growing pains and talking about what they want their relationship to be like, whether it's going to be a cultural or traditional differences or different things of that nature, because sometimes those things comes up as well. But one of the big things that come up a lot is when I start focusing in on the singleness and the uniqueness of each person. And that is where things go, I think, a little bit off the hinges a little bit, because people are like, okay, so what does my past got to do with this, and what it's got to do with me being a single person and having my own this, that, and the other? But I have a solution for all that. I usually tell them that yes, your past is what you've seen. So a lot of times we're born with a blank slate, and we kind of start picking up all these behaviors and these different things that we see in the environment around us, and we start mimicking those things a lot of times. And there's nothing wrong with mimicking them if that's what people want to do as far as tradition goes and culture goes. But I tell everyone too, you still have the opportunity to create your own. You don't have to follow the examples that you watched as you were growing up. You can create your own lifestyle. And that's one thing that they, clue in on and realize, okay, we can do that. Okay. It's almost like sometimes I feel like I'm almost giving them permission to say we don't have to do it that way. We can do it the way we want to do it. But it's just them, if they follow with the idea of it, then a lot of them get to a better place where they're not trying to have a societal relationship versus just having their relationship. You kind of get where I'm coming from, Tremaine, with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a learning process because remember, we're all, we all start out as individuals, but coming into a couple situation, you're not quite just looking out just for the individual. You're looking out for, another person with you. So you might
Mhm.
have to make some compromises here and there on both sides of that equation to make it all work well.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the other things that I do tell them a lot of times is just trying to help them understand that no one is trying to change anyone. It's just that now that you're in a relationship and you have all this going on in this relationship or this marriage, it really is making the adjustments and the modifications. You know,
Yeah, it's,
tell them you're
think
not going to be the same.
I would say it's not really a change. Think of it not as a change, but maybe an
Mm-hmm.
evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're changing for this person. You're evolving to make the situation good between both of you because you're both individuals. You're both coming from an individual standpoint to a point where you have to consider another person's feelings and
Mm-hmm.
how they will react, how everything will like line up with their beliefs, your beliefs too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's it's I'm tongue tied. It's getting it's getting to that comfort zone that is basically the entire point of therapy when you do couples therapy anyway.
Correct.
And
Correct.
it's more like not to be afraid to take a leap of faith in terms of your life changing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think with that, communication comes into play. So I try to, educate my couples about passive communication, aggressive communication. And then where we really want to be is where it's more assertive, where you're actually sharing what is really happening and getting to a point where it's, you know, being open with the communication, being understanding. I like to also use some words like giving each other some grace and some compassion when we're talking about different things, and also giving yourself that grace and compassion when you're sharing different things. So communication becomes a great, you know, concern there, and a great skill for us to go over as well. And then I like to also get into some of the forgiveness therapy, where I always tell them we're not going to ever forget what has happened, but we got to get to a point. Again, I like to use my two words, grace and compassion, where we can have that kind of grace and compassion for ourselves and for each other. And like really realizing that we all make mistakes, you know. Repeated mistakes is a different conversation to have, but those, you know, mistakes that come up and things that happen, then we have to look at some of the forgiveness therapy. And I know, you know, many of my couples be like, why I gotta forgive, why I gotta forgive. Well, and then I, you know, help them understand that, well, right now we got a situation or a scenario, and it sounds like some forgiveness might need to occur, unless you want to hear about this for the rest of your years, because that, you know, that's how long it, you know, before someone really gets over it. So if we talk about forgiveness, we can try to, you know, figure out what's a better, you know, frame of mind to be in versus nagging you about the same thing for the next 30 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to move forward because your relationships are not forever. Nothing is forever and ever, but like the it's not to say that you forget it. It's
Mm-hmm.
that you know that you have to, like you say, give grace to people. And you know, if it's a repeated thing, of course, you know, you have some concerns there.
Yeah,
But if this has just happened once, you have to be adult enough to talk through whatever you're going through, because you don't want to immediately cut somebody off and be like, well, I don't want to deal with this regardless. I think in today's world we're so ready to disassociate from everything the minute we see trouble.
mm, yeah, I
There's a-
agree.
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's good to follow your instincts sometimes with those things, but that apprehension can also be, it's a double-edged sword
Yeah,
where, it protects you, but it also can stop you from, it can stop your growth.
absolutely, absolutely. I do also think that when we do get into some of those sessions, as you're speaking of some of, you know, stopping the growth and things like that, I hit up my couples about types of abuse, past, present, whether it be abusive relationships, abuse in their family, and different things of that nature. I talk about that too, because I definitely want to know what was abusive in those past relationships and how those past relationships kind of ended.
Oh
Um,
yeah. I
mhm.
mean, those relationships form your person as well. Every interaction informs who you are now.
That's correct. Absolutely. So with that, a lot of them are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, just follow the just trust the process here.
Yeah, people
Hmm.
don't tend to people don't tend to think about little interactions and just little things that might get you in the moment, but you don't think about why you're sitting in a different place now. But yeah,
Exactly.
those little things, I'm like, no, they'll get you.
Oh yeah, and I get them with the fair fighting skills too. I try to help them understand that when we're talking about fair fighting, I mean, you can't just come in and, you know, start yelling, screaming, kicking, and going on and hitting, and that's not fair. That's not fighting
I,
fair. You know, you
I
can't
think
start hitting below the belt either. You know, there's a
I
lot of
think
things.
in
Hmm.
terms of the goal, especially I think when you're quote unquote fighting with your partner,
Hmm.
in terms of like, verbal sparring, of course,
Yes.
is that you're not trying to win the fight, you're trying to understand.
And that's where the breakdown is. A lot of times people are not trying necessarily
Yeah,
to
people not trying to understand
understand.
people.
Yeah, they're tit for tatting each other. And I'm like, oh
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah,
not the way
yeah.
to fight. No,
That
no, no.
that that becomes the go-to, and it's a
Right.
lot of a lot of that is, the idea of, maturity and having the maturity to go, no, I want to understand what the problem is so we can fix the problem and not just take jabs at each other all day and get nowhere.
Right. And I got another good one for you. One of my couples, I remember, they asked me, well, what do you mean by fair fighting? I was like, well, I don't think you or anybody else is going to be a couple that's never going to fight. So
Yeah,
we
I
have
mean,
to have some
yeah,
rules for fighting.
yeah, it's a part of the process.
Right.
Like if you
Yeah.
like you don't just get with the person and you're going to agree with
Everything they say.
everything they
Right.
say. You're gonna
Unless you're just that passive.
yeah, I'm about to say unless you're just that passive, which says something else about your relationship. But you know, I think because eventually I think if you're passive in a relationship, eventually you're just gonna let somebody's gonna want you to interact with them. You
Right.
being passive all the time is not good in a relationship because a relationship is about interaction, and you can't be an inactive participant in a relationship.
Right. So we look to tell people when we're looking at communication, you don't want to be passive and you don't want to be aggressive because neither one's going to get you anywhere that's going to be appropriate for you or that's going to be adequate for you in a relationship. But being assertive, using your I statements and really trying to explain what's going on and how you're feeling are definitely better, versus just going with the flow of whatever's happening and then crying about it later. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah,
Like I said, it's about like if a fight were to occur, it's about understanding the other person. It's about necessarily getting your emotional needs out to that person. If it gets to a fight, then obviously somebody's emotional need, emotional, physical, or any of their needs are not met. That's
that's
why you're having this fight.
exactly. Exactly. Agreed. So with that, we'll go to a commercial break and we'll be back after these messages. And hello, this is Dr. Latasha McElwain with the Green McElwain Foundation. I have teamed up with osjourneys.com for a wonderful health and wellness retreat in Belize. Our dates for the retreat will be May 21st through May 27th of 2024. There's going to be luxury accommodations. There's going to be a whole lot of time to be able to reflect on things and finding your inner self. The health and wellness retreat will focus on just breathing, just being able to breathe. That is the mantra or the outcome of many individuals nowadays looking for a mind, body, and soul rejuvenation, restoration, and retreat. Come join us. You can get more information at osjourneys.com for travel and for the retreat in Belize. Come join us. And we're back with We Got Options with the Doctor and Son. I am Dr. Latasha McElwain, and I have my son, Tremaine Green. We are going to finish up our podcast or continue our podcast today in regards to couples therapy 101. So when we're talking about couples therapy, we're going to get back here. I was talking to Tremaine a little bit more about, grace and compassion, and we definitely said that that is something that's needed. But there's also a grief process that families are going through sometimes also. And that grief process can be from some of the things that have happened, because a lot of times what happens is as you're going through the process, before you actually come to therapy, things are happening and people are holding it in and people are feeling like their feelings are being hurt and feel like they're being walked all over or not listened to or not being heard, or what they're saying falls on deaf ears. So those are some of the things I tell them. That's a grieving process when you realize that some of the trust and some of the love and some of the care and some of the other things have been interrupted by some of these activities that go on, like when we get to the point of infidelity is one of the biggest ones. There is a grief process with that. And so I try to tell individuals, when we talk about that, it is a tough discussion to have, but it's not something that anybody's going to get over in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 months for that matter. You know, it's a process of, finding out about it and then going through the process of grieving. And, working my couples through some of that is sometimes, an interesting process, as well as helping everyone learn how to apologizing appropriately to each other, and being, again, that grace and that compassion when we're talking about, those apologies. A lot of times, the continual situation of, I'm gonna use infidelity as the example, Tremaine. Infidelity and communication. I'm gonna use both of them. Those two becomes more of a traumatic situation for folks. It kind of goes back to past traumas, present traumas, and then we're looking at the fact that the husband or the wife, I encourage them not to create future traumas. Basically, avoid having a re-trauma, recreating the trauma again. I think that is something that is very interesting that people don't understand. That sometimes dealing with a level of communication that's not adequate, or even dealing with infidelity, those things can create a level of trauma in someone's life. Because everyone's raised up in cultured, and traditions are totally different, and we're bringing all these beliefs and these values together. Tremaine, what thoughts do you have on that?
In terms of, like, I mean, like we say, it's a process in which you're growing and they're growing, and learning how to combine those worlds of, your beliefs and somebody else's beliefs
Oh yeah.
is very different, because it depends on what went on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you said, going through grief and infidelity and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's always the saying that, other people are the next person usually paying for the other person's crimes.
Okay.
And that's not the way that you want to, have your relationship be, where like you are judging this person based on what happened before.
Yeah, you wanna, come to some
You want to come in fresh. Not to
right.
say that not to say you won't be leery, but
You
you
want to be
need
able to rebuild some trust.
yeah, I'm about to say you want to be able to have that trust with the person, and you don't want to start off on the back foot where, or you don't trust them from the beginning. Then what are you doing in a relationship if they're not willing to trust anyone?
Correct. And then the other thing is looking at healthy boundaries. Now, this is a big one. I talk about healthy boundaries all the time, but healthy boundaries would be where I have to get into it with a lot of my couples, because when you're thinking about your boundaries, you're in this passive mindset, and you kind of let things just fall by the wayside. And I'm like, but is that healthy? And most of the time, it's not. So we have to sit down and readjust ourselves and figure out what are these healthy boundaries that we need to be working through and dealing with. And then,
Yeah. And,
go ahead.
oh, no, no, no. Go ahead. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, I want you to go ahead and give me what them healthy boundaries if you got something. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, well, like we've been saying throughout the show, it's all about finding those boundaries and knowing, what to say, what not to say, and how to approach a person.
Yeah, and I usually get my couples this way. I tell them you have one person to communicate with for the rest of your life right now. So learning that one person versus the fact that some of you may have dated different people and dated two or three at one time and things like that. You have one person to focus on. And that's the person you focus on, how to conversate with them, how to communicate with them, how to understand their feelings, know what's going to give them this, what's going to give them that. You got to be open and honest with the person. You got to meet them where they are with a lot of stuff that's going on, and they will meet you where you are if, the appropriate level of intelligence and everything else and emotional intelligence is, coming with the package deal here. You know what I mean? Which a lot of times I do tell individuals that your emotional intelligence do grow once you're doing therapy and you're doing more of a deep dive with yourself, which a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, Tremaine, that's where therapy normally ends. And they don't come back the next week because no one wants to take that deep dive of themselves. You know what I mean? And I tell them, this is the only person you're going to be vulnerable for the next 50, 60 years, however long you're going to be married till death do you apart or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? This is the only person you're going to be vulnerable for the remainder of those years. So what I'm doing in the session most of the time is helping them become a little bit more vulnerable with each other, and
Yeah,
having,
I mean,
yeah,
in terms of being vulnerable with people, the thing is, I think our society has taught us that, especially for men, and I can't speak for women, but for men, we're taught to hide our vulnerability so tightly. We're told not to really even give that to, I mean, even our partners.
yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
I'm about to say, I mean, even though, we're not told that, but we're like, we hold on to that mask of masculinity so tightly that
Hmm.
to be vulnerable is to let go of that and to be human. It is to be human. It is to be, because you're going to have vulnerable moments. And I'd rather have my vulnerable moments with someone that I trust and
Hmm.
care and would care about my vulnerabilities and not laugh at it.
That's correct.
That, I mean, that's what most men are afraid of. That, like, oh, she sees me vulnerable, she'll laugh at me.
Oh, yeah,
She'll think of me as less because
exactly.
I wasn't able to keep up the mask and have that bravado that we're all supposed to have. But
Hmm.
the thing is that what men need to hear is that no, it's okay to be vulnerable, especially if it's your partner. That's something special that she's gonna covet because you're not like that with anyone else.
Correct.
You're not gonna be like that with anyone else. There's gonna be that part of you will always remain with her.
Exactly.
And I think, it's okay to be, and if she does have a problem with that, then maybe you might have to rethink the relationship because you're going to have vulnerable moments. The mask is going to fall off the longer you stay with this person.
And that's what I always say. We meet the representative for the first date, second date, we start meeting that representative, but eventually that representative will start showing their true colors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm about to say the mask will come off
correct. Uh-huh.
between both parties.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is when the mask starts slowly falling off, I'm like, you'll find out whether they love the mask or they love you.
That's correct. That is so correct.
Because the mask is good to have on in the face of certain things, but I'm like, that's not who you're gonna be when you first wake up.
Right.
When you first wake up, the mask ain't on.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But the
agreed.
but the question of a relationship is, can you love me with my mask on and the mask off?
Faults and all. That's what I like
And
to use.
that's I think where most couples get scared because they're
Mm-hmm.
like, would she be okay with me with my mask on? Would he be okay with me with my mask off?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's, I mean, even married couples can have this because it's like, of course, I'm about to say, depending on how long you want to keep on that mask or the veneer of your thing, it can last a while.
Well, yeah, I like to tell folks we have to get to the point where we're gonna love that person, flaws and all. You know,
Yeah. And
flaws
the
and
thing is,
all.
I think most people in terms of relationship, they're not, when you're in a relationship, you're signing up for a journey. No matter how long that relationship lasts, you're signing up for the journey when you get into a relationship.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah.
A journey of growth and self discovery in yourself too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's a big piece to it when we go from relationship to now marriage. People don't realize that's a big difference. Even though we've been living together all this time, we just went and got the contract and we got the commitment now in that form. But there's still a process with that also. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean it completely changes.
Yes.
I
Roles
mean
make and things.
I mean a lot of time with marriage comes children, and with children, I mean,
Again, growing pains, right?
and then again, you look like that's a whole new avenue of like, well, we got a kid now. How are we
Mhm.
gonna show them how we interact so that they don't get the wrong intentions about relationships from us?
Exactly. And then let's even step back a little further. If we start to cohabitate, we got to figure out how we're going to keep this house together.
Yeah, because I mean, I mean, it's something that I think that I think you want to try to get settled. Like when you first move in together, I'm like, you first want to get that settled down when that happens.
Yeah, you want to talk about what the tradition is. If you got
Yeah,
tradition, some people go into the
yeah,
tradition where mom did everything. Mom does this, the woman does this, the man does that. If it's traditional, if it's cultural, or like I said, that's why I asked about those relationships and those family relationships that they grew up with. Like, was mom and dad married? Was what were the relationships like in the house? How was this the atmosphere, the environment with your siblings and stuff? So all this kind of plays in to where you're going, and like you said, this journey, right?
yeah. I mean, it's not, and it's not something that it's something that like we don't think about in terms of affecting us, right? It's one of the things we don't think about affecting us right now. But like, yeah, like if your mom did all the stuff and you believe like, oh, you get a wife, that's what she's supposed to do. That might not be what she's not your mother.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And even if she's the mother to your kids, I'm like, that might not be the right relationship for her as a person. Remember, you're dealing with her as a person rather
Correct.
than her as her position,
That's correct.
or even like, or even a man having to do all like the keeping the house like well thing in a monetary capacity.
Yes, yes, being the breadwinner, and
Like
yeah, making
yeah,
sure it done around the house as far as the paint, paying the shutters and mowing the yard,
yeah,
making sure you have the money to put groceries in the home and things of that. Yeah,
yeah. So I was like, the thing is that like it's we've got to have a kind of, I guess, a checklist of yeses and nos of like what we think is acquired of us. We don't have to live in the stringent boxes in which society has said, okay, you have to be like this. No,
right.
you be,
You
you
can create
be
your own. You can
yeah, I'm
create
about to
your own
say,
playbook. You can create your
yeah,
own playbook if you want to go. If you want to go, I tell them, if you want to deviate from what your parents did, then you got to create your own playbook. You
yeah,
know?
you have to come up with your own designs of how
Yes,
you're going to live your life,
exactly.
because it may work for your parents, but it ain't going to work for you.
That's correct. Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, and then I do in all that I do kind of put my folks through a little bit of narrative therapy where they kind of tell me what the narrative is. Tell me what the past narrative is, the present narrative, and tell me what the
Yeah,
future narrative is
I
going to be.
mean,
Tell me what
yeah,
it's
because
going to
I mean that's like basically what your wants and needs are, because
be.
you expect certain things of a person the minute you meet them,
Exactly. Exactly.
and the minute they become a certain fixture in your life, you're gonna expect certain things. But we don't say them. We don't say what we expect. We just assume they know, right?
Yeah. It's about those expectations. I tell people those
Yeah,
expectations get,
and
ooh,
and I'm
honey.
like, and in my opinion, I'm like, wait. How's your partner supposed to be what you want them to be if they don't know, or
Right.
if
And that's where
or if they even
communication,
want to if they even want to be that to you?
that part. That part, yes. Yeah, because I'll tell people in a minute, I'm a therapist, so I love to hear people's problems, but when it comes to sometimes the family problems, I'm like, hey, hey, hey,
I mean, some of some
the
of the
line.
family problems, of course, all of it bleeds back, of
But
course.
absolutely. But I'm just saying though, sometimes you don't want to be the family therapist or the house therapist or you know what I mean?
I mean, but it's all about finding the boundaries,
The
like you said,
boundaries.
finding the boundaries in which you want to live,
Yeah.
because you may love this person a lot. Is your love strong enough that you're able to work with them through what they're going through? They're having to work along with you as well.
Yes,
It's about
exactly.
it's about finding compromises, finding places of understanding in the relationship that is the true trial of your relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you find it, therapy gonna be done. That's a wrap.
Yeah, exactly. And so with trying to find all those truths in the relationship and knowing what's going on, we talk about all kinds of things like addictive behaviors. We talk about anger management skills because we got to get those under control too. We got to talk about mindfulness and being able to relax, having time out, having an outlet from the home, sometimes, and appropriate outlets from the home. And then
Oh,
sometimes
of course.
yeah, sometimes we have to look at the fact that mental health comes into play. Sometimes people get depressed. Sometimes people get
Mhm.
lonely. Sometimes people have anxiety. It comes with a lot of different aspects of things that start to go on, you know?
Yeah,
And
because you're dealing with a whole nother person that has stuff before you and will have stuff after you.
exactly.
So you have to be prepared to accept what they are entirely and try to understand them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always tell them, and once we throw kids into the mix, I'd be like, oh boy.
Oh yeah, that's a whole different equation because there's a whole new person in the
Exactly,
relationship
exactly. And so
that doesn't know any better, you know?
yes. And so I try to help everyone realize, okay, so, we have to process through these things. And then one more, a couple of other things I want to mention is operating in ignorance and bliss. So that's one of my new little sayings. Sometimes when you're dealing with a real passive person and you really, that person's just really not coming around, I'll mention that to my couples that now if we're just going to operate in ignorance and bliss, then that's a different conversation to have because that means that we're really not addressing a whole lot. And it's going to come back. And I always tell them too, that's a part of building up that little ant hill in the backyard, the little ant mound in the backyard that becomes Mount Everest. That's what we're
Yeah,
doing when we living
yeah,
in we're operating in just ignorance and bliss.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're just gonna be building. You're just
We
gonna be
just
built.
building,
You're
we
just
just
gonna
building
be
Mount Everest. They're just building and building, building in Mount
yeah.
Everest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm about to say, if you spend all the time trying to hold up this boulder, eventually you're gonna feel all the tension in your arms. You're gonna want it's gonna fall.
Exactly. And I make this joke all the time, Tremaine. I say, and then after we done built Mount Everest, then y'all trying to build Mount Everest 2, Mount Everest 3, Mount Everest 4. Yeah, y'all trying to
Yeah,
build so many Mount
I
Everest.
mean, relation things in relationship tend to compound upon each other in such a way that if
Correct.
you don't fix one, you're gonna have more.
Correct. Correct. And that's where I get into and where I tell them, conflict resolution is going to be it. That's what you're going to have to do. We're going to have to break down some of these conflicts where it's not just, well, he won't and I won't, and we just got a problem. No, he won't, you won't, but we can figure out how you're
You
going to
gotta
come and
you
he's
gotta
going to
find your
come.
happy medium.
Exactly. They got to come, they got to meet each other halfway. We got to find, and
Yeah, I'm
that's what
about
I
to
always
say
tell her.
it's not about having your way. It's
Correct.
about, you know, and I mean, I think, the thing about, couples of today is that we tend to disassociate with problems.
Yeah. Hmm.
When we see problems, we like, oh, we want to get away. We want to deal with that on our terms, but it's like, no, you gotta let's deal with it now.
Right. Just avoiding conflict, avoiding the,
Yeah.
the
We
confrontation and avoiding it when, like I said, if you're going to be sitting there avoiding the confrontation, you want to avoid everything, dealing with that situation, then you just want to be operating in ignorance and bliss.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, it won't be that way because I'm like, in my opinion, you're dealing with another person. The other person is not going to take too kindly to that type of interaction with you. Eventually, they'll get
Correct.
wise to you eventually.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, that conflict resolution is big in my therapy because I try to make sure that people understand that you've got to come to a conclusion. You can't just keep on brushing everything under the rug or keep on putting everything on top of that little anthill in the backyard that's going to end up being, again, Mount Everest, right?
Yeah, I'm about to say that's how you lose the relationship
Exactly.
because problems mean that, oh, you stop talking to each other.
Yeah.
Oh, you stop interacting with each other.
Now we're
Oh, the
growing
relationship
up.
not working now.
Yeah, we're growing apart instead of growing together, you
Yeah, I'm
know?
about to say, and the thing is that the problem with that is that that's gonna be something that's always gonna stop you in a relationship
Yeah. It's going to be
because
a blow up too. Yeah, it'll
yeah,
blow up.
even if you were to move on to a different person and they don't necessarily hit you in your sore spot, there's gonna be a sore spot they're gonna hit.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And because we're people, we have many weaknesses, many sore spots that like we don't want to get touched in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if the other person's been with us and they know that, you know, sometimes you might get hit in that sore spot. But the thing about it, if you come to a point where you can overcome it together, then not that they won't hit it, but it won't hurt as much because, y'all talked about it and they understand, you understand, and y'all coming together to overcome it
Exactly. Agreed.
versus just trying to not deal with it.
Agreed. Agreed. I got you. And I think also when we are trying to make sure that we're coming to conflict resolution, I always tell couples that, looking at the strength of the couple, exploring the strength that they have together, trying to be grateful that they are together and they are participating in therapy together and they're wanting to move forward, and then having a good bit of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
All that comes through when we start talking about conflict resolution and getting to some, coming to some to the same playing field. So all of
Yeah.
us can be on the same page. You know what I'm saying? We can be in
Mm-hmm.
the same, somewhat in the same chapter. If we ain't on the same page yet, we're in the same chapter at least. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
getting to a point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean that. I mean, in my opinion, that's the beauty of relationships.
yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
you can tell a bond is really close when you can say how much you overcome with a person.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Like I'm
absolutely.
about to say, when you overcome certain things with people, you two become more inseparable. The love becomes stronger.
Correct. Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, Tremaine, we're gonna go ahead and take a commercial break, and we'll be back after these messages. Hi, this is Dr. Latasha McElwain, and I would like to introduce my first book. The name of my first book is Fragile Brokenness: The Unspoken Secrets That Shape a Pretty Unprotected Girl into a Practicing Clinician and Therapist. My key phrase is, when life gave me lemons, I gave life a doctor. I hope this would be an inspiring read for everyone, with inspiring experiences and heavy experiences that will bring about the importance of being self-aware, dealing with traumas, and being focused on your mental health wellness. The proof is in the journey. I hope you enjoy my book, Fragile Brokenness: The Unspoken Secrets That Shape a Pretty Unprotected Girl into a Practicing Clinician and Therapist. Sales begin December 2023. And we're back with We Got Options with the Doctor and Son. And today we're going to conclude our conversation that we're having in regards to speaking on Couples Therapy 101. And so basically, I'm just sharing some of the things that I go through with couples therapy when individuals schedule a session with me. This is kind of how I go through um, I guess a good bit of things, a magnitude of things, really, going through the sessions that we're going through and hitting these pointers are some of the things that me and Tremaine are talking about when it comes to, couples therapy. And so starting back up, we were just talking about making sure that conflict resolution is our biggest, we're hitting on that. But we were also talking about, after we start to take some of that conflict and get it resolved a little bit, we want to try to start building our relationships, basically talking about our partner's quality and then talking about shared qualities that we share together, things that I like about my partner, things that my partner like about me. And then moving into creating some level of, it could be a fitness routine. It could be recovery if you guys are both recovering from alcohol and not going to drink as much. If both of you are changing your eating habits, or if both of you are, you got some different health goals you want to get into, just creating goals and activities. Or if you want to keep the house clean or keep the yard looking nice and manicured for the whole spring, summer season. Keeping the flower bed, nice, working in a garden. So I'm just thinking about different things that a couple can do together to start strengthening and building their relationship back together, even though we still have some of these things going on. But now, because we're conflict resolving, we are going to start to rebuild that relationship as we resolving those conflicts and having more communication. Those are things that we, try to pride ourselves on, and holding the partners accountable for different things. Like accountability is a big thing. That's why I say when I go into therapy, I tell them, well, if I see something, I'm gonna call you out on it. If I see something, I'm gonna call him out on it. I'm gonna call everybody out on what's going on because we have to be able to hold each other accountable moving forward. We want to get out of the routine we were in previously that caused us
Yeah.
to come to therapy or caused us to have
Yeah.
issues.
Because I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
relationships usually turn into the blaming game.
Yep.
You did this, you did that, and I'm like, it's not that. It's about, I mean, it's about the point. It's about finding a point of understanding. So if you're trying to come off blameless or come off as
Yeah.
the innocent one in a relationship, I'm like, you can't. None of us are that. None of us are that good.
Exactly. Exactly.
None of
Exactly.
us. None of us are that flawless in a relationship. Because if we were that flawless, I don't think you'd be in a relationship. I'm sorry. I don't think you'd be in a relationship if you were that flaw. If you were that flawless, because that kind of stuff. I mean, you you come off a little pompous. I think personally.
You'll come off kind of like how Adam was when Adam didn't know that he was out there in the garden by himself and didn't even know he needed a partner. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
wouldn't even you'll
you
be
get
just
you get too full of yourself. You don't, but you don't
Adam didn't know that.
and you don't want to have that kind of thing because then it's like your partner sitting there looking like, well, what am I, chopped liver?
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's in terms of that type of, I mean, that's why people are afraid of therapy because like when people lay bare their grievances at a therapist, that's what it becomes.
Yeah, I get it.
But I'm like, no, let's not come from it from he the blaming game. Let's try to see, where we could be better to each other. That's
Exactly.
what therapy really is about. It's about how we can be better to our partner.
Exactly. That relationship growth, those relationship growth activities start to kick in. We start to
Yeah.
be more
Like
involved
you
in,
like doing things together, you know,
yeah,
makes
absolutely.
it feel like, I mean, for most people in their life, I'm like, most of your life you've been alone. You've been like, yeah, you might have your family next to you and all that. But in terms of a relationship that is like not somebody in your family, you're all by yourself.
Yeah, and then I still encourage them still to have some
Of
self
course,
care.
you want to have time for
Yes.
individualism and everything like
Individual,
that.
yeah, self care time, that self esteem building. You still have to maintain all those things. And I tell them where your self esteem was in your 20s ain't going to be where your self esteem is going to be in your 30s and
Oh
into your
yeah,
40s and your
like
50s. It's
yeah.
not.
I mean, you might gain a little weight, might make you feel a little subconscious.
Correct. And that's what I try to help all my, clients realize that things are going to change. And women, you're going to have babies. Things are going to look different, And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, dudes are gonna have changes too.
oh yeah, men are going to have changes as well. Absolutely. And then, one of the biggest things I do like to hit on, especially with my couples that are looking to get married, we jump into finances. I talk to them about playing house with their finances so they can make sure that they're building for the future together. Start looking
Yeah,
at different things they'll need. I do a little financial stuff talking about, insurances and different things like that, making sure that they're getting ready for purchasing a home or renting together or, just different things like that, just to work through some of the financial things and all the, because you got some families where, or some couples where someone might be helping mom or dad, or someone might be helping
oh, I
both
mean, of
children,
course,
you know? Yeah. So there are different things going on there that still got to be talked about and still addressed too, as you're looking to get into a marriage, of course.
hmm
And then again, going back, starting to create those nice, healthy boundaries of the routines for the household, date night, family time, just
Yeah,
having those things in place so things will look a whole lot more, you have a whole lot more togetherness happening,
yeah.
like the family dynamic.
hmm
Yeah. And then last but not least, I do go into this right here with therapy as well. Some of my couples come in, they're not sure where they're going or what they're going to do. And if we get to talking about separation and divorce, I try to help them be as great. They can
Yeah,
end up being
you
great
want it to
co-parents.
be as amicable as
Yeah,
possible.
yes, amicable as possible. I work on them being good co-parents, being able to coexist together
Yes,
when it comes down to these children, and again, avoiding recreating trauma. We
Yeah,
to
because
avoid that.
when you separate, we I think we as a society have given separation a bad rap.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, in terms of actual separation, I think that those are good things. That meant that no, the two people involved saw that there was issues that they may not could overcome,
Correct.
and they thought it better to go their separate ways.
Exactly.
And I'm like, no, they're maturing in their own way.
Exactly. That has to a lot of times it have to do with a lot of emotional intelligence when you realize that what my wife is doing or what my husband's doing is just not going to jive. I'm just not going to be able to flow with that. So I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to
I
do
mean, we all have our limits, and we need to make
exactly.
that apparent.
That's where the communication comes in. Yes.
Yeah, I'm about to
Absolutely.
say those things. I mean, there are some yeses and nos in terms of relationships, and
Oh
if
yeah.
if it comes to a point where we must separate, I mean, the thing is that you want to teach it, especially if you have children, that no, it is okay to not have the love where we fall in love and we ride off into the sunset in the game, and that's it.
Yeah,
You don't want to,
it could very much change and be different for everyone. You don't,
yeah.
and I tell people it's hard to be in a loveless marriage.
Oh, it's very hard,
Yes.
and I'm like. And I mean, I don't think you want to keep anything together. I mean, I know people want to keep things together, especially if they have kids, to give them I guess, a form of normality. But I'm like, you don't want to have that normality be given at the expense of falsehoods.
Well, let me say this. You can have that formality happening and it's actually hurting your kids more than helping your kids.
Yeah, because I mean,
They're seeing it. They
you're
can
giving
tell.
them you're giving them a false picture
Yes, you're getting the false hope of something that,
that,
yeah,
I can have it like mom and dad.
yeah, but then the question is always like I told you when I start therapy, I always ask about mom and dad's relationship. But is mom and
Yes.
dad happy? You won't believe how many clients that are coming and tell me, well, my mom and dad are not happy. They're just tolerating each other right now. Oh my, okay.
But that means that they might not need you might not need to try to stay like the
Right.
idea of if you need to tolerate each other. I'm like, you don't need
Yeah, but
that's somebody you got to
yeah,
be with. I don't want to have
exactly.
to tolerate a person I got to be with.
Yeah, but if a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old comes in and tells me that their parents are tolerating each other and their parents are in their 50s and 60s, I'm like, well, good gracious. You know what I
I'm like
mean?
I'm like, nah. I understand the reasons why parents would do it, but I think that's sending the wrong message
It
to
does.
a kid, to a
It does.
child.
Mind you, I just said it sends a wrong message because now their 25, 30-year-old is sitting down talking to me.
Yeah, thinking that thinking that that's like the relationship,
Yeah, that they're supposed to, you
that,
know?
that, that you're supposed to. I'm like, no. I mean, and media does a lot of that too.
Yeah, we try to stay up with what
Like I'm about to
societal
say,
expectations
media
are.
also. I mean, it perpetuates the idea of the
It does.
man being like his old ball and chain
Mm-hmm.
in terms of his wife, and how many comedians make jokes on their wives, and and it comes down to a question of, yo, do you love that woman for real?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. One of the other things that come up when we come, when it comes to counseling too, is raising the children about the cultures and the traditions and the new ideas for raising kids nowadays. A lot of parents are having to think outside the box because the traditional aspect and the cultural aspect of things that's not flying with a lot of the new generational kids.
I mean,
That's not flying. They're not going to church
it,
5 days a week, 8 days a week. You know what I'm saying?
I
Five to
mean,
8 days a week, you're going to church. No,
I mean, it'll. I mean, well, in some households, people ain't had choices, but
that's what
that,
I'm saying though.
yeah,
That's not
I mean,
necessarily
that's not,
yeah,
yeah, that's not what people are trying to do. And the thing about traditionalism, if you want it in their life, in your child's life, you can introduce it to them, but do not try to make it like something that they must do, because you don't want them to loathe it.
correct.
You don't want
Hmm.
them to see it like as a bad thing. If you have like a religious thing, you don't want them to see your religion as something that was just something that they did to appease you.
Correct. Correct. You want them to have a
You
little bit
want them
of
you want
understanding.
them to be able to come to their own decision of, well,
Correct.
maybe the religion helped me in the moment where I needed it.
Yeah. exactly.
not because it was logical that that my family put me into a type of thing of religion or anything like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, I am so glad that we have had this conversation about couples therapy one-on-one, because this definitely is an eye opener when it comes down to relationships. And I want people to understand, when you're coming to therapy, we're the therapists and we're there to be, with you and build that rapport with you. But definitely, we're there to try to come up with some solutions and some reasoning behind some things and hopefully get you on the right track. So, yeah, this is. This has been an amazing, amazing conversation. As always, thank you, Tremaine, for joining me and having this great conversation. And for everyone that's listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you come back and join us again next week for We Got Options with the Doctor and Son. Have a great one.